And welcome back to Hollow Knight, episode 5, getting underway. So the Royal Waterways, presumably the sewers beneath the City of Tears, and we're greeted with a new critter called the Pill Flip. They will flip over and change direction, otherwise not very threatening. And here, a secret area with a bench. I immediately recharm for an upcoming boss fight. And this is the one fight where you really need steady body, the charm that prevents you from recoiling after you land attacks with the nail. So pretty funny, those guys split in two after you kill them, and then each half attacks you fresh. Those are called Flukemarms. And those little flying guys there, those are called Fluke Fays. So if you couldn't tell just from the action so far, Royal Waterways at this point in the game is a pretty dangerous area. It's very easy to die down here. And you're also seeing that the enemies take a lot of hits to kill with the nail. Now I could kill them more quickly with spells, but I try to hang on to my soul in case things get out of hand, which they quickly do down here. Alright, big time, the Flukemarm Devatron. Ordinarily a really tough boss. A lot of people die, a lot of deaths on this guy. And I've seen it done a couple ways, but I like my way. I just stand there and blast it with Soul Shade. And the only problem is all those Fluke Fays kind of swarm you. Well, that's where Steady Body comes in. keeping you steady when you attack them with the nail and not getting recoiled and pushed around. That's how you get pushed off that ledge and you get swarmed and you die. So, again, like I said, as long as you have steady body and Shaman Stone with Soul Shade, pretty easy to do that way. As for our reward, we got a charm called the Fluke Nest. And this is an odd charm, and it ends up being one of the most powerful charms in the game. I won't use it a lot initially, but you'll see it much more later down the line. What it does is it transforms your Vengeful Spirit or Soul Shade spell, whichever version of the spell you have. And instead of shooting a ball of energy across the screen, it'll plop out like a bunch of little baby flukes. They just sort of like sit there and wiggle. And they do damage to anything that hits them. And if you can get all of them to hit something, it hits for a ton of damage. Okay, so a strange, somewhat jubilant salutation as we approach the section of the sewer where all the feces is piled up. This should be interesting, Devatron. Oh yeah, big time, Devatron, the Dung Defender. And he drops the Defender's Crest. The bearer emits an heroic odor. So this will require some explanation. More immediately, notice that we're flipping a switch and apparently filling up some kind of reservoir with a bunch of acidic water. So just keep that in the back of your mind that we've done that. So as for the Defender's Crest, the Dung Defender is likely a dung beetle, right? And because he's defending all the dung, it probably doesn't smell real good. So what happens when you wear the charm is you're surrounded by a brown cloud. And it will do damage to enemies that get caught in it, but not very much. Second, when you interact with NPCs in dialogue, some of them like the smell and others don't, and that can influence conversations from time to time. And last, regarding the Defender's Crest, and perhaps most interesting, it will interact with other charms and change their behavior, sometimes in interesting ways. For example, last time we got Glowing Womb, the charm that causes hatchlings to spawn out of you and go attack enemies for you, drains your soul. If you have that and Defender's Crest on, each of the little hatchlings that spawn will also have a little brown cloud around them, and they'll do extra damage when they hit enemies. So there are some fun ways to combine Defender's Crest with other charms and come up with some interesting builds, but I'm not going to bother kind of going into it or listing them all because we never end up using it. Except once, and we only do that in dialogue with an NPC because he gives us a discount because he happens to like the smell. Go figure. So the new little critters out there are called Hwurumps. Hwurmp. Don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. But they start off as little, small, fairly docile guys floating around. If you hit them, then they expand into like a big, blown-up version, and they get angry with you. So they're kind of like a blowfish in that regard, but an insect version of a blowfish, if you will. And if you do like I do, you just blast them with a spell and you kill them outright. You don't have to deal with their different stages, but otherwise, not a very difficult enemy.
Pantera? Kattereo?
So notice this switch here. This opens a door into another part of the City of Tears, which essentially gives us an alternate entrance into the Royal Waterways, and that's really why I came up here. As for Eternal Imelitia, I've never been able to piece her into the story really well. She doesn't seem to be insane or plagued like the rest of the inhabitants, but there's not really much else we can say about her. A note sign from the Defender, presumably the Dung Defender, and if we hadn't beaten him in combat and flipped that switch which drained all the acidic water into that reservoir, this entire area would be submerged in acid and we wouldn't be able to pass. All right, Isma's tier. Check this out. We can now swim in acid Devatron. Yeah, this is big time. So Isma's tier, although you don't use it as often as, say, Mothwing Cloak for dash or Mantis Claw for grabbing walls and sliding around walls, nonetheless, it's one of the most important platforming tools in the game. In addition to the obvious benefit of no longer taking damage when you fall in acid, we can now access secret areas like where that grub was that we just rescued, and in some cases even entire portions of the map that we couldn't get at before because you have to swim through acid in order to get at them. So definitely one of the most important reasons for coming to the Royal Waterways, and definitely good that we have it, and even better that we have it earlier than later. So you may have noticed this strange interim area as we pass by it on our way to Isma's tier. It's a very different color scheme than the Royal Waterways, kind of black and gray and sepia, and that section we drop down through there is very spiky, a little bit platformy. Well, instead of just continuing on as we super dash back to the Royal Waterways, I decided to stop our dash midway and explore further down into this area and see what it's all about. Now, before you say anything, I realize we're wandering off into this strange new area, and we never went and got the map for the Royal Waterways. Well, this is one of those few exceptions where I decided to put off getting the map until later instead of getting it right away, and go ahead and do some other things, which includes exploring this new area. In fact, we're going to get the map for this new area before we get the map for the Royal Waterways. But have no fear, we're going to return to the Royal Waterways. There's a little bit more to do there, not least of which is to actually get the map from Cornifer. And once we have the map from this new area, as well as the Royal Waterways, we'll be able to do a proper map break and chart out all our progress. As for this new area so far, we don't know much about it, and we haven't gotten the big pretty title yet. But one thing we can immediately note are the black inky dots that seem to be kind of phasing in and out with the smoke and the other atmospheric details. And I gotta say, they're eerily similar to the black inky dots that kind of explode out of our little bug hero when he takes damage. And a new enemy, the Lesser Malek, a cousin of the Brooding Malek. And like most enemies thus far, it's much quicker and easier to blast it with spells, especially using Shaman Stone, than it is to try to hack away at it with the nail.
Basin. Bakusa!
So another appearance by Cloth, the strange club-wielding barbarian bug, and she seems to be struggling with some issues of cowardice, so it'll be interesting to see if her character develops and is able to handle that in the future. Now coming up here, we're going to pick up something off the ground called pale ore, which is a resource used in upgrading the nail, which makes it stronger and do more damage. I'll have a lot more to say about that later, but just keep it in the back of your mind for now. Okay, so the ancient basin. We finally have the proper title presented to us and the name of this new area that we find ourselves in. And from the sound of it, you should recognize it by now. That sounds like conifers humming. So you know that there's a map right around the corner here somewhere.
Make him no kuchin.
Okay, so we got our map, but as per usual, I'm going to get away from Cornifer and his humming before I open it up and do a map break. Before that, though, notice here, there's a way to go up there, and I can't quite jump high enough to get to it. I'm going to need like a double jump or something like this in order to get up to that ledge and explore that area. All right, this is going to be a very quick map break because we haven't really done much in this area, but I did want to give you something because I feel bad about not getting the map in the Royal Waterways, and you might be getting a little bit lost at this point in the episode. So here we are. We came from the Royal Waterways, and again, we'll get that map later and do a big map break and connect it to this area, etc., etc. So that's where we came from, down, and then we went to the left, rescued a grub about here, and then just kind of did a loop around this area. Over here is where we talked to Cloth, and down in here is where we got the pale ore. But that was pretty much it. Then we just came back up the way we came and down into here, and somewhere over in here is where we got the map from Cornifer. Now we dropped down, and right about over here in this corner is where that ledge is that I was showing you we couldn't get up to. And once we're able to get up to it and head over here, we'll be able to explore whatever this strange area is that's being called Palace Grounds. Okay. As for right now, we hop down, and right here is where we are now doing the map break. So we're going to look over here a little bit, see what's over here, and then eventually head over to this bench, update our map, and head this way and explore some more. Okay, so another one of these strange message stones, like we saw at the very beginning of the game. These words are for you higher beings, etc. This one's speaking of a pure vessel that has already ascended, and what lies beyond that door there with that symbol on it is only the refuse and regret of its creation, of it being of the pure vessel's creation. So, very esoteric, very confusing. This is definitely going to warrant a return visit and more exploration. All right, a welcome bench and a welcome rest with it. Now, I do pop the map open here, but there's basically no progress, so nothing to report. As for the recharm, I do something very similar to what I just had. Instead of using Shaman Stone, Grub Song, and Soul Catcher, I do Shaman Stone, Grub Song, and Spell Twister, the charm that reduces the cost of spells. And those are very similar builds. It's almost negligible, the difference between them, but that's just the way I decided to go for it. What's more interesting to note is when I don't have charms like Gathering Swarm, which actually would have helped me right there gather up that Geo, or Compass, or stuff like this, then you can be sure that a boss fight is coming up. Because while those charms are very helpful when you're running around and exploring, they're basically wasted charm notches when you're doing a boss fight. And another new critter, very similar to the Molex. This is called a Maw Lurk. They're immobile. They just sit there and spew out that orange venom. Not too hard, but they're a little awkward to try to get in and damage. Now, as for those little guys that have been crawling around a while that I just killed one, those are called Shadow Creepers, and they're basically mindless. So you can see just how many hit points these things have and why it's pretty unadvisable to try to hack at them with an unupgraded nail alone. In fact, I'm going to leave off attacking it momentarily and explore the shaft in the room just below us before I finish it off and carry on. Now when we go down here, we're going to find a simple key, and what it unlocks is not important right now. We'll talk about it later. What's more important is to talk about these little orange critters. See those guys? We've seen them a couple times since we've come down here into the ancient basin. And those are called light seeds. Now, light seeds aren't very interesting in and of themselves. In fact, they're harmless. Even if you run into them, they won't do you any damage. But I do want to bring your attention to them because it's not coincidental that they're called light seeds. And furthermore, they're going to interact with an upcoming boss in an interesting way. So keep them in the back of your mind when we get to the boss. Okay, those guys are called infected balloons, and they kind of act similar to those follies that we saw in the Soul Sanctum. Instead of being white soul versions of flying blobs, I guess they're orange, kind of light infection versions of flying blobs, but otherwise they act very similarly. The broken vessel Devatron, and notice what the light seeds did at the start of the fight. They accumulated within the vessel, but it being broken, it wasn't able to contain them, and they overwhelmed it and it attacked us. So perhaps its original intention was to contain the orange light, but because it was broken, it was discarded down here in the depths of the ancient basin. Now this is in direct contrast to the pure vessel, which we just read about, which has already ascended up and out of the ancient basin. So our reward, the monarch wings, presumably named after the monarch butterfly. These allow us to double jump, so one of the most important platforming tools in the game. Now, as we pass back by the corpse of the broken vessel, notice it's kind of shimmering with all these essence dots emanating from it. Check out what happens when we hit it with the dream nail. Wow, big time fight, Devatron. Now check out what's going to happen when we interact with this sort of shimmering dream ghost corpse that's hovering above the real corpse. You're going to notice in the upper left our essence counter shows up. See it right there, 78. And then bam, 478. So that is a big time essence reward. Okay, so a little explaining. Every now and then there are certain bosses who, after you defeat them, their corpse remains behind, and it kind of shimmers and emanates these little essence dots like you saw with the broken vessel. Now at that point you can strike the corpse with the dream nail, and what that will do is teleport you to a dream space where there's a dream version of themselves that is much stronger and much harder to defeat. And they also tend to have a slightly different name. Like in the dream version of the broken vessel, she was referred to as the Lost Kin. Now, why this mechanic exists and how it interacts with and what it means for the story or meta-story, however you want to think of it, let's put that on hold for now and try to encounter a few more of these dream bosses, as they're referred, before we start to insert our theory crafting. For now, just bear in mind that they're out there, similar to, say, the Whispering Roots and the Dream Warriors, and they're a means of acquiring essence. Now, as for essence, we don't know a whole lot about it, but we do know that the seer wants us to collect it and return to her. And we also know that she referred to it as the slivers of light that dreams are made of. Accordingly, essence is related to light in dreams, as well as this sort of parallel dream world that we visited twice so far, in addition to the dream nail, which is what we used to escape this dream world when we were initially there. And it's how we entered it the second time when we just did battle with the Lost Kin. We can also infer that light is associated with the color orange in this game, as evidenced by the little orange light seed bugs. All right, this is going to be kind of a strange map break. Notice I grabbed the shot in this zoomed out world map view of things. I did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, our local progress in the ancient basin, since our last map break at least, isn't that noteworthy. When we return, I will briefly zoom in on the ancient basin map, and you'll see that the only new update is this area to the left where we just were. We fought the broken vessel, got the monarch wings, fought the dreamer version of the broken vessel, the lost kin. Then we did a little platforming, saved a grub, and now we're back here. So no big deal. Second, and more important, we need to talk about these 4 big icons. 3 white masks and 1 big black mask, okay? The only way to see all of these on the map at once and where they are in relation to each other is by using the world map. So this is why I have it on this view. Now, as for what they are, let's start with the big black mask, okay? When we were first in the City of Tears, remember we found the memorial to the Hollow Knight, and Hornet talked to us there. Well, at that point, we got a message saying, Temple of the Black Egg location added to map. So we already knew it was up here at the top of the Forgotten Crossroads because we had already visited it. But at that point in the game, this big icon was added to the map, okay? So that is important. Second, and maybe more important, the actual memorial to the Hollow Knight and the statue of the Hollow Knight himself, if you recall, he was a tall bug with a big double-horned mask, which looked exactly like this icon, okay? So this is important. This is significant. And there's some solid connection now between the Temple of the Black Egg and the Hollow Knight. Now, as for the other icons, the 3 white masks, if you recall at the start of last episode, we were in the resting grounds, and we started by interacting with a memorial to the 3 dreamers. And right before they banished us to the dream world, we got another message. It said dreamer locations added to map, okay? So that's what these 3 icons are, is the locations of the 3 dreamers. Now, we don't know much about the dreamers, but now we know where they are, and we should go out and find them and interact with them and figure out what they're all about. As for the masks, these 3 masks correspond to the symbols etched on the seal, or the 3 seals that seal off the Temple of the Black Egg. And we also remember seeing them in the cinematic at the fountain where the statue of the Hollow Knight is. So they're also connected in some way to the Temple of the Black Egg and the Hollow Knight. Now, as for the iconography, notice that these 3 are exactly the same as our little guy. They're white with black eyes. I mean, this guy only has 1 eye, but you get the point, right? In contrast, this guy is a black mask with orange eyes, okay? So we don't quite know what to make of this, but there's one thing that just happened that can maybe help us along. We met the broken vessel, right? And recall, I posited that it was broken because it wasn't able to contain the orange light seeds, okay? They overwhelmed it and then it attacked us. So if in fact the intention of making a vessel was to contain this orange light, then perhaps the pure vessel that we just read about that had already ascended and gone up out of the ancient basin was in fact the Hollow Knight. And that would be supported by the fact that its eyes, at least on this icon, are orange, okay? The Hollow Knight is the pure vessel, and it's pure and functional and successful because it is containing the orange light, unlike the discarded broken vessel. Now, as for why is the orange light bad? Why does it need to be contained? We don't really know much about that yet. We know it's related somehow to light and dreams and essence, but we haven't gotten that far. We just know that at some point the inhabitants of Hallownest were trying to contain it, and they needed a vessel in order to do that. Now, as for other indications that orange is bad, you may have noticed throughout the game so far, when you damage an enemy, it kind of exudes orange dots. Similar to when we take damage, we exude black dots. And when you kill an enemy, it kind of just explodes in an orange cloud, you know. We've already seen this. Those orange balloons were called infected balloons, okay? And the Moleks, they spit orange venom at you. The aspids, the little wasps, their projectiles that they spit at you is orange, you know. So it's kind of obvious that everything in this game that's bad is kind of orange. So it's safe to assume that the orange is bad. It's related somehow to light and dreams and essence. And the people of, shouldn't say people, the inhabitants of Hallownest at some point in the past were trying to contain it. And perhaps, as mentioned in the memorial to the Hollow Knight and its sacrifice, i.e. its ability to contain the orange light successfully, enabled Hallownest to last eternal. Perhaps that's what was going on up here and why, at least for a time, the kingdom of Hallownest was a success. Okay, so notice on our way back, now that we have double jump, we can get up to this ledge that we weren't able to get at before, and now we can explore the palace grounds. So instead of a palace, we find the remains of a palace, as well as a corpse in white armor, emanating little essence dots. However, striking the corpse with the dream nail failed to transport us to the dream world. So, what's going on here? Well, the case is that certain dream spaces are so hidden and so big sometimes that they require a much more powerful version of the dream nail in order to enter. And think about it as we pass back through here. It's not just the corpse of the White Knight that we're trying to enter, but this is really the corpse of the entire White Palace that we're trying to enter. Now, you wouldn't know this your first time through here. I'm just kind of, sharing it with you after the fact. But that's what's going on. And accordingly, it's going to require a very strong dream nail in order to enter that dream space. So the next question is, how do we upgrade our dream nail? Well, you can probably guess we have to take the essence that we collect back to the seer, and she'll be able to upgrade the nail for us. Now, in addition to upgrading your dream nail, every so many hundred essence you return to the seer, she'll reward you with an extra gift, say a charm or a mask fragment or some other type of reward. Now, as for the White Palace, right, how much essence is it going to take to upgrade our dream nail enough to enter that place? Okay, go ahead and guess. Get a number in your mind, then I'll tell you. And the number is 1,800, Devitron. So you're going to have to tell me if the number you guessed is more or less than 1,800. So we've got a long way to go. And speaking of that, here's another whispering route, so let's get at it. And notice where we are. We're in that very spiky, kind of platformy shaft where we halted our super dash when we were returning from getting Isma's tier in the Royal Waterways. And right there we halted it and then just fell down. And from there we explored the ancient basin. So obviously we're leaving the ancient basin for now and ascending back up. We're going to end up in the City of Tears and then re-enter the Royal Waterways and finish it off, as well as getting the map for the Royal Waterways. Now, one thing I need to mention, you may have noticed this, maybe not. Look at the essence counter, upper left. See, it's 468, now 469, etc. Well, you may remember earlier in this episode, we had 78 essence. And then we got 400 for beating the Lost Kin for a total of 478. Well, how is it now we have less? Have we lost essence or something? No, not at all. What that is it's a discrepancy between save slots. I did every passage in my playthrough twice on 2 different save slots. And then in the final footage that you're seeing now, you know, sometimes I would use some from take 1 because it was better, and sometimes take 2. Well, along the way, here and there, things like essence, like I forgot to do a whispering route, you know, like we're doing now in one take, and I didn't in another, so I have more essence, or maybe the currency is slightly different, you know, like in one it's 724, and the next screen you see it's 595, et cetera, et cetera. So these are just small discrepancies that I wasn't able to keep super tight, because there's a little bit of a random element, or in the case of essence, I just, you know, forgot to do something in one that I didn't do in another. So I try to minimize that as much as possible, and generally speaking, the save slots are pretty tight, you know, and life count and soul count and geo count and essence count, etc., etc. But here and there you will notice those discrepancies as we switch from screen to screen or load in to load in, and I just want you to be aware that's what the cause of it is. Okay, 3 new enemy types there, none of which you really got to see because I blasted them with the spell. You'll see 2 of them here. The one attacking right here is called a Husk Dandy. The one that's about to run away from us there, that's a Cowardly Husk. And then there's kind of a big fat one that'll try to jump on you called a Gluttonous Husk. And these are just the basic former inhabitants of City of Tears that just kind of wander around having gone mad. And they'll attack you and all that, but otherwise there's nothing really interesting to say about them.
Velmi Ardred. Kachael Liasoki. Velmi Ardred. Warasun Gian. Velmi Ardred. Kachael Liasoki. Velmi Ardred. Warasun Gian. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Velmi Ardred. Warasun Gian. Helmadelka.
Okay, so selling off our excess relics for Geo. We will be doing some shopping soon, so I wanted to get as much cash as possible. As for right now, as promised, we're re-entering the Royal Waterways, okay? And we're going to be heading left. There's just a couple more things to do, but most important, we're going to get the map from Cornifer. And with any luck, we'll be able to do a map break and look at our progress in this area from almost an hour ago. Another mask fragment. That puts us at 2 of 4 on the current mask, meaning 2 more and we'll get another bonus life. We're at 6 now, so that'll get us to 7. A welcome addition indeed. And before that, we rescued another grub. So not a bad little revisit here, and the map is going to be just to the left.
Make him noise, kucing.
So finally, the Royal Waterways map, and we're going to step away from Cornifer's humming to do the map break. Problem is, the next screen is in a different area, the fungal wastes, so that's the map that comes up instead of Royal Waterways. So we have to step back in to where Cornifer is. But have no fear, I recorded the background music from this area without him there for the map break. Okay, so at long last, the Royal Waterways map break. This map, like all the maps, leaves a little something to be desired. You know, These blocky shapes that depict these rooms, for example, you know how it is. There might be like 2 or 3 parallel corridors with twists and turns in each of them, and the map just doesn't really detail all that. But that said, the truth be told, I don't know how it looked to you for the first time, but now that I've done it a few times, as labyrinthine as the Royal Waterways is, there really is just one or the other way to go. You know, you can kind of just go to the left or go to the right. You know, it's not really that tricky. So with any luck, this will help, and hopefully it wasn't too disorienting to watch. Okay, so we started the episode up here. We entered from the City of Tears using our simple key to unlock this latch. Came down left and down and found this bench. Then we charmed up for our boss fight and came over this way and did the Flukemarm and got our Fluke Nest charm as a reward. Okay. Then we came back to the same bench, recharmed, and went over this way and up. And here we fought the Dung Defender boss. Okay. And then we flipped that switch, which filled up that big reservoir with acid water. Okay. And what that did, now that we can see it on the map over here, Isma's Grove, it drained this entire area of acid, enabling us to enter it. All right, now let's clean this up. Okay, so from here, after we did the Dung Defender and flipped the switch, we went down and then kind of followed this path, only one way to go. And right about here is where we super dashed over into this section of the map. And notice this big shaft here. This is that big vertical spiky shaft where we just came up from the ancient basin and re-entered the City of Tears, and we did our Whispering Root Tree. That's what this big shaft is here. And when we super dashed over to this part of the Royal Waterways, we passed through it. Okay, and then from here, we just went up, cleaned up some things. This little smudge there, that's actually where we climbed up that shaft and entered that apartment with Eternal Immolitia, and we flipped a switch so we could get back into the City of Tears. That's really all that is. And you can see it, right? Whoops, keep drawing over it. It's that little, just that little mark right there. That's what that is. So at any rate, we went over here, came down into Isma's Grove, and found Isma's Tear. Double backed up here, found that grub and rescued it. And then we started making our way back over to here. And as usual, we super dashed across, but remember, instead of going all the way over this way and back into the Royal Waterways, we stopped halfway and then just dropped down into this bottom of this shaft and then went left and down into the ancient basin. Okay? Once we did all of that progress and we made our way back up, we found the Whispering Root Tree right here and then did our platforming bit and collected those essence pieces on our way back up to the City of Tears. Okay, once up here, we headed back, went up here, sold our relics off, and then re-entered, went left, took the bottom, found the mass shard here. Oh, we also rescued a grub here on our way, and then came back up and over, met corner, forgot the map, and now we're down here having our map break. So, again, hopefully now that you see it, it's not that confusing or whatever. And I apologize for having to put it at the end instead of the beginning or the middle, and even worse, to have an entire other section, the ancient basin, and all that went on there happen, you know, in between our progress in the various parts of the Royal Waterways. But trust me, I thought about it a lot and tried to do different orders and take different paths, but this ended up being the best way. And it's one of the only times that we have to do it like this. Usually we get the map and do the map breaks nice and early and, you know, keep you dialed in. So that's that. On to the fungal wastes. Okay, so at the far left, the Royal Waterways connects with the fungal waste. This is good. And down here we found a hidden charm, the Dash Master, at the foot of a statue of the Dash Master. Interesting. So let's see what this does. Basically just allows you to dash more often, and you can also dash downwards, which is, marginally helpful. Not one that I tend to ever use. Okay, at the end of this platforming bit, we're going to rescue an abandoned bug. And I want you to notice her eyes. They start out orange, kind of cloudy and gassy. And then after we calm her down, her eyes turn back to black. So keep that in the back of your mind as we talk to her.
Pin solia neku.
So our faithful hero has rescued a damsel in distress. It'll be interesting to see her once we return to Dirtmouth. With that, I think we should wrap up this episode. It's been a very dense episode, 2 full areas, a lot of theory and backstory, a lot to take in, but we've made a lot of progress. Hope you're enjoying it, and we'll see you in the next episode of Hollow Knight.